Good. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ahmed Ali Gul, Director, Center for Disaster Management at the University of Management and Technology. And I thank you all for joining us. It's a pleasure to introduce the speaker for today's lecture, Dr. Mohammad Faiz Shah. Dr. Shah is currently a lecturer at the School of Engineering and Technology, CQUniversity, Melbourne, Australia. Dr. Mohammad Faiz Shah holds a Ph.D. In disaster management from University of Tsukuba, Japan, and is an academic and researcher with extensive experience in various international universities and research industries in Australia, Japan, Hungary, and Saudi Arabia. His professional interests and research interests include risk engineering, disaster mitigation and management, sustainable development, climate change, and project management. Dr. Shah and I share a similar background in academics. Our alma mater is located in the same city. Although we were in Tsukuba around different times, we share the same friends and love for the city. I'm truly honored that you're joining us, Dr. Shah. On behalf of the Center for Disaster Management and SGS at UMT, we are truly grateful for the time you have taken out for us today, particularly given the time difference. Among the participants today are students from various programs of School of Governance and Society and students from the City and Regional Planning to whom I'm teaching climate change and disaster management this semester. We also have some participants, including students and faculty from other programs in UMT. I request you all to be mindful of your mic and video. There will be ample time and opportunity to ask questions during the Q&A breaks interspersed during the lecture or at the end. Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question. If you're viewing this live, please type your question in the comments or chat. And I'll allow the speaker to talk about today's topic, which holds a lot of relevance for all of us working towards making our cities and urban centers safer and more resilient to natural hazards, in particular seismic hazards. So thank you, Dr. Faiz. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. It's nice and wonderful to be here. And thank you, Center for Disaster Management and UMT authorities to allow me to meet with this group of scholars of this university. And I'm a learner, in fact, true learner. I had no experience to learn from Pakistani Institute. I had a lot of friends in different institutes, universities all over the world. But this is really first time. I'm just excited to meet this good number of scholars. So it will be my honor to share some of my thoughts about the seismic risk and the role of seismic risk assessment in the urban resilience. So I'll try to talk based on my research work mainly. And today's discussion is not like sharing or talking mostly of theories, but my main focus is to learn the research on disaster management, especially seismic research or any other research is possible, any other field of disaster is possible. And so the thing is that why I'm intended to do like show my research or the procedure of the research, because nowadays the university or the institutes, their ranking is depending on the citation, number of the citations, not only that the paper is published, but it should be cited. So the citation is depending on the scholars who are related to the institutions. So this is my one of the like fascination to assess the institutes to like help them or prepare the scholars, the junior scholars, especially to learn about research. So that's why today's most of the content will be the research methodologies, and the result will be a limited result to discuss on the implications, but mostly I'll be talking about the research methods, the role in the urban resilience. So let me start sharing my screen and I will talk inshallah. Well, So the title of today's talk is Seismic Vulnerability Assessment for Urban Resilience. So first, I want to talk little about myself. Dr. Ahmed already told about me. I got my PhD in 2012 in Japan from the University of Tsukuba in Disaster Management. And before that, I had my second master's from the same university, University of Tsukuba. It was in development studies. And then previously, I got my first master's in international relations from the University of Dhaka in Bangladesh. And in between, I have experience working in the field of disaster management with Save the Children, ActionAid, and also some other renowned international organizations. Presently, I'm stationed in the city of Melbourne in Australia. I moved here from Saudi Arabia. Now I'm teaching as a lecturer, project management, Central Queensland University. Before that, I was in Jeddah. I was working in the industrial engineering department, and I served there for 6 years. Before that, I had a postdoc in the University of Tsukuba. I'm basically a disaster management expert and also emergency worker. I have the first-hand experience working in the field as a disaster and emergency management worker. I'm an expert on fire management, smoke management, and also evacuation in fire and smoke. I'm a qualified researcher applying the different methods, including qualitative and quantitative research methods. I'm expert of a couple of softwares, including SPSS, Stata, NVivo, VosViewer, Smart PLS, and Notes. And also I'm an expert of GIS. So all these things I apply in my major field, that is disaster management. Whenever I'm working, I try to continue my research in the same field. I have direct experience working in a couple of big disasters around the world. In 2014, we had heavy flood and raining in the city of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. I had a chance to work there. I had worked for 2011 Higashi Nihon Daishinsai, that was the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. And before that, several disasters in Bangladesh, in India, and in other places. I had a good chance to work from the field level. So I have both academic experience, research experience, and field level experience. Now, today's talk is related to the Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations. So I think the students who are in the disaster management course, you already know that 25 targets related to disaster risk reduction, which are among the 17, total number 10 is Sustainable Development Goal. So I mark here with the blue dot. So these are the area where disaster management stands, and the resilience is one of the part that we need to ensure by the improving the urban situation, considering the risk and disaster in that particular area. So the content of today's discussion will be talking about seismic risk assessment, urban resilience, seismic vulnerability assessment, between the risk recognition and intention for safety measures. See, this is one of the important things to involve the local residents and the community. Seismic vulnerability of residential buildings by risk rapid evaluation method. That will be the second case I'll be discussing. And finally, there will be a reflection. The learning objective today, at the end of the session, I'm expecting that you will be able to explain the importance of seismic vulnerability assessment. You'll be also know how community-based urban resilience is important. Also, you'll be able to understand the pre-structural vulnerability assessment procedure. You'll be knowing about the low cost or no cost structural vulnerability assessment procedure. So these are the learning objective today. At the beginning, I want to give you a thought, a case for thinking for some time, and you will have 2 questions. In fact, I revised the question, only 2 questions to think and tell about your thinking in the chat box, and Dr. Ahmed can summarize some of the questions. So you think that you are in a imaginary city called Atitland. It was it's an industrial city and with a big number of population, and it's around the noon time, 12:30, and the Monday in the end of January. So weather was very good and pleasant. People were busy in their work, and suddenly a powerful seismic wave washed from the coast area, and it was very much sudden that you felt, and followed by the shaking. And this is first time for the last 100 years the city is having earthquake. So the result was is a big earthquake, like 7 magnitude earthquake, and the earthquake was supposed to stay longer, around 5 minutes. You are in front of your home and you hear the rumbling are around you, and cars are using alarms, or people are running, and garden walls, stones, stacked big collapse, and the city wood frame houses, most of which are holding up in the quake, caused fire from their kitchens because it was the noon time and the cooking time for houses. So it caused fire and electricity goes off. And then certain things were happening for the next 2 minutes, like destroying falling object from the buildings, and destruction by falling some of the buildings, some of the walls, communication stops, and you could not see outside, and you, because of the rubble, created a lot of smoke, and you try to cover your mouth by your t-shirt or something. Now, in that devastating situation, if you can think yourself, then I want to ask you first question first. Please think for 10 seconds and then just write in the chat box what to do soon after this situation. Okay, so we can have 20 seconds to answer for the first question.
Guys, I'll be moderating that. Please be careful. I see some people have their mic on. If you're not, if you don't intend to speak, please keep your mics off and type your answers in the chat below.
Okay, I think we can finish the first question time. So let's go to the second one, and then we will sum up your thinking. Second question: how hard is to do? Is it to do? First one and second one. First, whatever you can think for the first one, and how difficult it is.
Yeah.
In the second.
What is the first response? I mean, what do you do soon after, and how hard is it to do?
Yeah.
So we have this immense earthquake, and everybody is shocked. So what is the immediate reaction?
Yeah. So you can take around 10 seconds, and after that, we will summarize some of the responses.
I think the students are shy or hesitant to answer. I don't see many. There's Samula is saying stay away from falling buildings. That makes sense. If there's a lot of devastation happening, if you are inside a structure, the first thing you may think is get away from the buildings or evacuate. Yeah.
Okay.
And how hard is it to do? That's Dr. Faiz's second question. How hard is it to do? In our crisis and disaster management class, we usually talk about preparing a go bag and having a go bag or an emergency bag prepared at all times. And in this sort of an emergency, you know, this should be something right close to the exit of your house, and this is the first thing that you grab and take out of the house. So perhaps somebody might think of grab the go bag and save yourself, evacuate from the building. And sometimes it can be hard. Sometimes the exit of your building or your apartment building can be blocked. So yes, that can be a challenge. And Sami is saying it can be difficult in crowded neighborhoods, if trying to save away from buildings. And Mohsin is saying that firstly, try to save yourself from second disaster. Yeah, that's possible. Secondary disasters can be like a gas leak or a fire or something like that. That's very likely.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you for participating, giving your thought about this situation. Yes, I agree what you have thought, and still I think we have a lot of things to know about the neighborhood. As you said, we have to protect ourselves. If you have good idea about your neighborhood, then you know the route. If you want to evacuate, you know the best route that you can evacuate. You know the household nearby you, which has the possibility of causing fire or which can block the road communication, and you can know the way that how you can save yourself. But one thing, remember, the big earthquake, the big number of the magnitude, the lasting time is longer. The Higashi Nihon Daishinsai, it was lasted more than 6 minutes. So 6 minutes, and you know the magnitude was 9. So it depends. So when you should decide to evacuate from your home, so that is very important. So we'll have some thought during the discussion. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. Now I already but just to brush up your thinking. So let's start from here. An earthquake event is represent a movement when a weakness of the earth that we called fault fails catastrophically. So this is the thing is called earthquake. It fails catastrophically as the fault moves, that it ruptures or slips very quickly. When it occurs, it addicts energy in the form of seismic wave, and these waves propagate away from the fault area. And these waves are responsible for most of the damage that occurs as a result of the earthquake. So this is the scenario, in fact, of the earthquake. So the seismic risk assessment is one of the important area that we have to consider how we can assess this thing, because the seismic activities are not regular in a sense that it will occur every year or every month or after certain interval, or there are some certain climatic condition that can cause seismic movement. There is nothing like that. So that's why sometimes the thing happens, community or the residents, they forget if the last earthquake happens long before, like 100 years before. So nobody saw the nature of the earthquake. So the city will almost forget. But there are some methodology nowadays we are using for the city planning or the development that we have to consider those factors. So we have to consider the seismic risk for that. So seismic risk, this is the combination of the functionality of 3 factors like hazard, vulnerability, and the exposure. So the hazard is natural, and we don't have any control on the hazard thing. And the last one, exposure, also it depends on the time, and the time changes, the exposure changes of that community of the residents, and still we do not have any control. But the vulnerability is something like we can do something to improve our capacity. We can take some actions for our resilience. Like if we consider the vulnerability, improving the vulnerability. So in case of earthquake, it should be protecting the building in a stronger way, retrofit the existing building, or to follow a specific like designing pattern in the city so that the building structure are strong. So we may have some control on the vulnerability situation. So vulnerability is exposure plus resistance and plus resilience. So what is exposure? Exposure is at risk of any property or the population. Resistance, a measures taken to prevent or avoid or reduce the losses. And resilience, ability to recover prior state or achieve desired post-disaster state. So these are the things that I will be considering today in the case study that I will be discussing. So before that, let me show you this seismic vulnerability curve. This one is explained or developed by Hajus. Hajus stands for Hazard US. This model is called MBT, that is model building types. So you can see in this model, the y-axis is stands for the probability of the damage, and the X is for the spectral responses based on the type of the buildings. So the curve is showing the relation between the probability of the damage and the spectral displacement is explained in this curve. It can be slight, or it can be moderate, or it can be extensive, or it can be complete. So in order to assess the impact, this one is developed by the Hajus, and it's one of the oldest model, but still it is used by some of the countries, like most of the countries in South Asia or Southeast Asia, they are following, and excluding some super developed in terms of disaster management, they have their own methodology, but those who are did not develop something, so they are still following this methodology. So this one is something like that. This fragility curve of structure is something in the continuous pattern. So you can see the continuous curve is drawn here. So same thing we can show in the damage probability matrix. So this damage same pattern, but in a discrete pattern, we can see the still the Y is from the probability of the damage, and the X for the damage spectrum. We can see the slight, moderate, extensive, and the complete. So these two way can be explained in order to assess the probability in the city, or to decide about the building structure and consider the improving mechanism. And for the risk assessment, seismic risk assessment, we have to consider several parameters to conduct the assessment. So three things are very important for these parameters. First one is the kind of the acceleration, like the magnitude or the intensity scale of the earthquake. Then the type of the structures, and number one, which is very important, that is the socio-economic capacity of the area. So I want to focus the last one today's discussion, the socio-economic capacity of the area, how this socio and economic capacity of the area is important to consider in order to assess the vulnerability of the city, so that we can stand for the resilience of the city. Let's just have a look on the characteristics of the vulnerability. So this one is given by the classification is given by the UN ISDR in 2004. So this is another important thing that we are still using for our reference. So vulnerability is multidimensional, like it might be physical or social, economic, environmental, institutional, and also human factors will be composed in the vulnerability situation. Vulnerability is dynamic, so it can change over the time. So time will say that because the time is improving, the human civilization, human structural thinkings are improving, so it may change. Scale dependent, like it is expressed at different scale from the human to household to community to the country resolution. And also it should be site specific, like the area or the location based. So vulnerability can have these four types of characteristics in depending on the situation. Capacity and the resilience. So capacity is the combination of all strength and the resources that a community or the organization has utilized to reduce the level of risk or the effect of the disaster. So this is the capacity of what we consider in the risk management. Then what is resilience? So it is the capacity of the system, community, or the society potentially exposed to hazard to adapt by resisting or changing in order to reach and maintain an acceptable level of function and the structure. You can see the figure. I try to generate this figure that the location of the capacity and their resilience, it can be in a bigger circle, but still capacity can be separated, and it can be separated based on the different parameters of the community. Resilience is determined by the society's strength to increase its capacity for learning from past disaster or better future protection and improve risk reduction measures. And there are some preconditions for resilience. So it relies on the identification of the vulnerable population. So I marked this on blue color because my first case study, I applied this one, identify the vulnerable populations in a particular city. And second one, increased tracking of vulnerable populations, then established modes of communication, having trusted people like peers in the residence area and or the people area. And number 5, effective communication among agencies and the community or the group. So this one is also exercised in the case study number 1. And then there should be other preconditions like composition of different mock exercises and drills to build the capacity of the community. Advanced warning system, or we can say the real-time warning system should be practiced in the community, and then promote an atmosphere of trust and openness. So these are the preconditions the resilience really relies to develop or we can implement. So now the case study 1, I want to introduce this case. So this is the case of a city where the last earthquake happened more than 100 years before, the biggest earthquake. It was magnitude more than 8.7, and a lot of devastation happened in this city. But the picture is not that time city. It was not like that. So the oldest people, let's say the citizen of the city, even cannot say that I have experienced that big earthquake. So it was almost forgetting. So it was difficult, but the latest, the geotechnical like location of this country is on the fault line. And there is a prediction from the geologists that the next big earthquake, there is a chance of a recurrence of the earthquake, and it is not due, it's overdue. It can come any times. But people were not in that state, and we try to conduct the research in the people level, community level, because of the some of the practice in the construction of the buildings, but they did not welcome any research or any like authority to check their building structures. They said, we are busy with our life, but we are earning, so we cannot have time to concentrate on the earthquake thing. So this was conducted finally, this was done finally. So let's see about this city. So I'm talking about the city of Dhaka, which is not very far from you. So the example might be a good learning point to know about the situation in the neighboring countries. So starting about this city, it was challenging how we decide the city and why we are saying the city might be vulnerable, and how kind of strategy we applied to involve the residents and also the administration in the whole process. Started with the comparative study points. So basic urban study data, I have selected another city. I selected Tokyo with Dhaka and collected the similar data from the two cities. The first one was the urban data. So this urban data was the size of the city, the administrative units of the city, population, density of the population, building structure, density of the building. So this type of information was collected for the comparative study. Then also the population data, especially the increasing number of the population in two capital cities, and what is the trend of this population in two cities. Disaster management structure of two cities, and it was very good to find two cities. They have very good disaster management strategies. Tokyo had different disaster-specific strategies and resolutions, and also Dhaka had, but except the seismic risk they had on like tornadoes, flood, cyclone, but nothing specially at that time, only some standing order on earthquake management. Then we checked the existence of disaster management law. Japan had different law, but Bangladesh and Dhaka didn't have any disaster law at that moment, but now they are having disaster management law. Probable earthquake study. So this probable earthquake, you know, the Tokyo, Japan, they have the earthquake study, and they have made the probable earthquake or recurring earthquake like a Nankai earthquake, Tonankai earthquake, which may happen anytime in Tokyo. But Bangladesh didn't have any earthquakes study. And the overdue or the recurring earthquake information was not considered officially. Damage estimation study also checked and made some comparative study. Japan had the damage estimation, a specific time. If the earthquake happens at noon time, then how many people may be affected if it is happening in the early morning. So they have every time a specific damage estimation study, but for Bangladesh, they didn't have anything like that at that time when the study was conducted. And the disaster management budget study. So Japan had a lot of budget for the disaster management preparedness, but Dhaka didn't have much budget expenditure, only for specific for the events only. And then the final comparison was done by fixed point study using Google Map and Google Earth. So all the study, except the Google Earth, it shows that there are some disparity or something like a different situation where it shows that the Dhaka is, though it is disaster prone and it has a prediction for recurrence of earthquake, but they didn't have that much preparation at that moment. And fixed point analysis was done using the Google Earth and Google Map. Here I have selected similar area with Dhaka, like Higashi Ikebukuro area, and I took the Bakshi Bazar area. Both are old area in Tokyo and in Dhaka. So this picture, you can see this is 1 square kilometer diameter. And how I conducted this study, download the map and transfer to GIS data. And after that, I divided them into the block, the original blocked area, counted the blocked manually, because that time the Google Map was not much developed like today. So all the buildings and the blocks were counted manually. So all these 6 areas I counted and made a comparative study based on the like construction of the buildings, building density, and the block size of the block, route for communication, route for evacuation. So all these things were analyzed, and the final conclusion came from the first study that Dhaka needs to do more to follow a similar vulnerable city like Tokyo. So this was the starting of this study. And then before the second study, we have a lot of analysis like vulnerability reasons and the risk factor for Dhaka. So we identified the geotectonic locations of the country, like Indian plate, and some other plates were very close to the country, and there are some inner fault connected with under the Bay of Bengal. So those things has a chance for rupturing. And also India, Indian plates is moving every year. It is moving a substantial a position, changing its position. So geotechnical location is not good, so that should be considered. So it increased the vulnerability of the city. Faster growing population in the city. So Dhaka has a faster growing population for different reason, and I will explain those reasons on the right side graph. And there's also a rapid urbanization because the population is increasing, so urbanization is increasing at the same time. and the urbanization is non-planned urbanization. Hazard knowledge of the citizen was questionable. Socioeconomic condition of the residents also was considered because they didn't have much income to construct a good house. So low quality materials or the unsafe housing was the practice at the time. Building collapsed, tilt or sink without any reason, without any earthquake. So this happened in the city because the economic reason and the non-use of the non-good quality materials for the construction. So some buildings tilt or collapsed without any earthquake. So the risk recognition of the citizen was questionable. To ascertain the urban resilience, resident risk recognition and intention for safety measures were checked by the study. So if you see the graph on the right side, so at that time, it was Dhaka-centric development. People thought if they migrate to Dhaka, if they go to Dhaka, they will find job. There is scarcity of residents, so people, they could not manage their resident by themselves immediately. They have to rent a house immediately. And to accommodate the increasing number of population, the city was expanding like vertically. A lot of like building was expanding on the top of the building. So this was the reasons that increasing the vulnerability of the city. So the objective of the study to conduct this research was the seismic risk recognition, to check the seismic risk recognition of the residents and intention for their safety measures. It was very important to know about how citizens are thinking about the seismicity or their vulnerability. Without that, it was impossible to do something involving the citizen about, or think anything about the structural improvement of their residents. And after that, the second objective was decided to check the intention for their safety measures. And the figure on the right side bottom, you can see the risk factors, the population, rapid urbanization, and poverty. So it impacted on the low quality materials used in the construction of the building, low quality constructions, not following the building construction codes, vertical expansion of the buildings, and overloaded buildings. And it was impacted by the hazard knowledge and the socioeconomic conditions. So those things were increasing the risk in earthquake. You can see this picture. So this was like waterland. So Dhaka had a lot of waterland, the natural waterland, but this waterland was filled by soil. And after that, construction. So the city changed very quickly. So a lot of area in the city had natural water resources, but it changed. So soil filled area are most like prone to earthquake, and it may cause liquefactions. So this was one of the reasons. And the building construction practice. So you can see this building, around 53% building at the time was soft story building. You can see the opening in the ground floor. So in case of big earthquake, so the ground floor can collapse immediately. This is another pattern of the construction of the building. So heavy overheadings, 41% building we found heavy overheadings, or like hanging part on the top of the building. This is another type of the building, short column. So this is also hanging, there is no column. And openings of the building or exit of the building is very small. So in case of any emergency or evacuation, it will be difficult for the resident to come out from the building. Also, we checked the construction practice in the city. We find the bar bending was not adequate. They did not follow anything that is specified in the building construction codes. Too many joints in the bar and the columns when they construct the building. And the rubble, the mortar was used very low quality, mostly the low quality. So the consequences, the many buildings fall, tilt, or sink without any substantial cause of seismicity or earthquake. And there's Bangladesh National Building Code. It was enacted in 1993. Previously, it was like a standing order on disaster management, but from 93, they have the building construction codes. The implementation started, but that time it was not known by the people. So implementation was not like followed by the people. Although there was a guideline in the building construction code for bar binding, it is not practiced during the construction time. So the philosophy of this vulnerability research in the city was Dhaka was vulnerable for big earthquake because the urban expansion and the building construction practice and long interval of the major last earthquake. It happened 1897, magnitude was 8.7. Residents do not realize seismic existence because nobody experienced the earthquake before in daily life and the building construction. So they never considered the existence of earthquake in the city. The resident seismic risk recognition on building damage and intention for safety measures are proposed to check to improve the urban safety and build resilience in the city. So then what was the methodology that was decided to work with this resident in the city? So based on the primary data collection, we made some parallel figure to make some relations with like the residents characteristics, which is depends on the experience of the disaster, their academic qualifications. It also impacts on the recognition of the emergency situation, household income level impacts on the building structure. So based on that, we found that it impacts all these parameters impact on the residents' risk recognition. And if they recognize risk, then they may think about anything to do for their safety measures or the safety improvement of the building. So based on this parameter, we have decided that we'll apply mixed method research in the city. So starting with the qualitative data collection and then qualitative, quantitative, and again qualitative. So total a mixed methodology was applied in the city. And in order to collect the data, we followed some scientific way so that we can cover the whole city. So I'll explain here how we have collected the data from the big city. So we collected what characteristics data. So these characteristics data was mostly the population data, the geographical area, number of the building, density of the building, population density, and disaster intensity or magnitude decided by either by research organizations or from USGIS. So this data was collected and we conducted a cluster analysis based on this available data, and we divided the city into 3 clusters: most vulnerable, moderate vulnerable, and less vulnerable. So from these 3 clusters, we have selected 6 wards. Dhaka has total 90 wards, so total 6 wards selected from each cluster. So in total, 18 wards were selected, and for the data collection by questionnaire survey, 40 samples were decided that we'll be collecting 40 samples. So total 720 samples were selected from the city, and total 720. It was the survey was conducted in less than a month time. So it was a big job. In fact, we are not optimistic that we could finish before 2 months, but it was very good support we attained from the city because the management support from the local city office, newspaper, neighborhoods, organizations. So we made a lot of communication before we start this survey. So it was easy to find the support, and within 3 weeks, we completed more than 90%. So the survey was big. It was like 45 minutes to 1 hour interview and extensive interview from the residents. So it was a big job, in fact. And after completing the data collection, we analyzed the data using the Stata software, SPSS, AMOS, and Excel software. This picture shows the number of the wards in Dhaka. Left side you can see, and the right side we developed this map and we put color. Red color shows the most vulnerable wards in the city. the yellow color represents the moderate vulnerable, and the green color shows the less vulnerable cities. Here is the questionnaire. So this is for you, in fact, when if you have any intention to use questionnaire survey, so this will give you some idea. So the questionnaire had 3 parts. First part had the basic information of the respondent and the area. Second part, knowledge of the risk recognition. Here we have some very important questions, but we ask them strategically so that the resident don't feel offended, or they think that we are imposing something, or we are predicting something bad on them. For example, you can see in the second row, which disaster may severely affect your life. So do you suspect any big earthquake? So this one, we did not ask them directly, but we asked their understanding if they have any suspect, and if they suspect that, if they can anticipate the probable time. So we got some good result from this type of answers, something like indirect interrogation we have conducted there. And the third part of the question, we put the intention for safety measures. So all questions are related to safety measures, that if they have done something bad in their building constructions, then what they intend to do and what can they do. And if they have the ability or their desire to pay for that improvement. And finally, when we were conducting the data, we were connected with the local city office, ward office. And in fact, we are welcomed by them, because we help them to improve the location of the building. You can see in this is a ward map, and the black color indicates the house that we have surveyed. So survey was done in a way that we can cover all over the world. So you can see that there's not like two, three black spot in one area. So we are very careful in the field when we were selecting the data. So it was like total representation of the whole ward by the survey. And this map was shared to the city office after we have completed our study, with the study result also. So some of the result indicates that severely affecting disaster would be, the consideration is the earthquake. 61% resident, they say they will be considering earthquake the most severely affecting disaster. And if major earthquake happens in Dhaka, so that questions they anticipated, yes, 91% people said yes, there might be a possibility, because they are nowadays they were aware by the situation or the seismic movement in the area. And what will be their action for disaster? So most of the residents, they agreed that they want something like earthquake resistance housing for their housing. And here we have the justification for the risk of recognition. And this time we are successful, that citizen, resident of the city, they recognized the risk in that city. You can see in this figure, the top one, the major structural build of the building. So we have 42.5% people, they are living in the RC structure building. And they said the possible cause of the building damage, even after that, they have the RC structured building. 32% people, resident says, yes, the building have a chance that it may damage by the big earthquake. So here is the recognition of the risk. So they understand, and that time they understand, yes, we have done something which may endanger the life of the building in case of big earthquake. We can see the central tendency of the data, the mean of the data. It indicates some interesting findings for us. In the mohalla, ward and smaller unit than ward is called mohalla. And in the mohalla, we found 4.2% people, they were suspecting the collapse of the building. But interestingly, they said about their building, they're living in the same mohalla, but they said our building is okay. My building will be okay, but maybe my neighbor building would be not okay. So this things is called normalcy bias in case of disaster management. People think that my preparedness is good, but my neighbor preparedness is not good. So that is the normalcy bias. This figure is the resident intention for safety measures. So this is very interesting. So we introduce them before introducing some of the like ways for improving the building structure, like repair, restoration, retrofitting, or earthquake insurance. We ask them the questions, and you can see here before giving the information and after giving the information. It was a big change after giving the information. I will show you the what was the information that we have given. This figure is one of the important turning point for the research, and it gives us the next direction to do for the city. So when considering the experienced disaster, most of the residents, they said they experienced flood, 361 resident experienced flood. They never experienced earthquake, but when they were considering the severely affecting disaster in their life, so they considered the earthquake. So this is the big change in their recognition of the risk. This one is, you can see the recognized risk. That means the what will happen in their area or in the building if big earthquake happens. So complete destruction. So most of the resident, they answer to the complete destruction because of the construction patterns in their particular area. But when they were asked that how much damage you can accept, you can see the no damage. Highest number was no damage. So this is the example or another reflection of the normalcy bias. So we identified this this group of people. So I gave you two papers. This is the first paper. You can see the most potential people is the third one. So their recognition of risk is smaller than accepted risk. 29.7% resident identify. So these people are the low potential. So they need some motivation or some supportive work to bring to the do something for the improvement of their building or do something for the city. And after that, we go to the willingness to pay, because the first part was intention, risk recognition. Second one, intention for safety measures. So they intended to do something to control their building or keep their building. And if they have willingness to pay, first, most of the people, they said, no, we don't have the capacity to pay. So you can see the highest number, no is the highest here. But after giving this information, so this information also, technically we develop this information. It's not like something predicting, but what is the research and the outcome of the research. We give some basic information about the earthquake factors in the city. And secondly, we put some pictures. So the present practice of construction of building in the city and what happened, similar buildings in other cities in the world. So it worked fantastically to the people, to the resident. They check these pictures, and after that it changed in their answer. And also we give them some information about the retrofitting or how they can take any measure to protect their building. So retrofitting measurement cost and other construction related cost was given as per the local currency. So after giving this information, we can see willingness to pay increased a lot. So it is higher than the no. And finally, this model was developed. So for the next action, this risk recognition behavior model was developed. So you can see this model is showing that. I'll explain the right side, the bottom part. You can see given information on earthquake hazard is very important, because without this information, people cannot decide what will be the available procedure to accept. So in that case, we check the resident, and based on this model, we go for the further analysis, some structural equation modeling, and based on that, we go for the policy recommendation for the city. So the thing is that the research was taken that not only for the checking the vulnerability, but how we can change the practice of the city. And the city authority is responsible to do something for the people. So we give them the methodology or the improvement plan, and where this risk recognition and the improvement plan should be there, we show in the specific area. Okay, some of the reflection, the summary of this research was that we could engage the local ward offices and the city office in the whole research process. We could engage the local mohalla. We could engage the community-based organizations. And in the community level, we have experience sharing And also the commitment was given in the sharing, and some policy implications was given responsibility to the local ward office, so that they can work with the local resident in that area to fulfill their commitment. It's very important that people say something that I'm willing to pay, but there is no guarantee because they are not signing anything or there is no agreement. So in that case, how this commitment can be maintained? So the local community-based organizations and experience sharing in that organization helped us to maintain that commitment. So I'll go a little faster here. This is the theoretical model before improving further level for the intention for safety measures and the willingness to pay. We go for the structural equation modeling. Different statistical experiment was done. So I'm not going to explain all those things. I'll go to the structural equation modeling. So this is the first structural equation modeling. So the model fit for the first one was the intention for safety measures, considering the residence factor, risk recognition factors, and the building factors. And second model we developed, including the intention for safety measures, and the model was statistically fit. So we had some logical evidence to go to the policy planner after that. Then how to improve the situation. The third part of the survey, that how residents rely on the news sharing or news collection. So most of the people, they answered they use the television. And then we also check the effect on the neighborhood if big earthquake will happen. So you can see the building may destroy and it may close the road communication. This one, residents rely on safe construction. They rely on the engineers for the safe constructions. Facilities to be protected with high priority in case of big earthquakes. So they decided the fire and rescue offices and the workers should be protected. And if they can afford safety measures before and after giving the information 2 times, so we have collected those things. And after giving the information, the result significantly changes. And required support from the safety measures. So this was very important because the local ward office, they offer that if citizen is willing, then we can give them some support, like either support from the engineering team or something like other support from the local government will be given. So that it's not like 100% the resident will be paying for the extra improvement of the residential. That worked fantastically there. And based on that, we come to the model. This is the existing model before we conduct the study. So the disaster management structure of the country, it's like top-down process, national level, then district level, then upazila level, union or municipality level, or city level, and the bottom was the community level. Here, we include the ward level and we show the communication. It's not like top-down process, but it should be something two-way communication from the level to level. And the ward office should be considered where this community or the local area or the resident of that area can be involved in the improvement of the urban structure. And finally, we developed this disaster urban safety improvement model for the city. And this was presented in the city office, local offices, and in present of the residents, so that they can follow and the policy planners, they can intervene in the proper places and they can go for the next stage of the improvement. And it has good impact in the city. In fact, the study was well accepted. And after that, those who are involved in the study, so there is a good change in the overall things. And nowadays, the actors, we have the other actors like a lot of NGOs or other international organizations, research organizations, universities are working in the total disaster management process. So the thing is that they are involved in the city level and the world level, the concerned university or the international organizations or local organizations who are working. So they are involved with the local citizens in their respective area. Some of the things that as the outcome of the study. So this type of leaflet was given to the citizen with the information of the earthquake. So this was given to the building owners about showing them the destruction level of the existing exercise in the city. Second type of leaflet was given to the tenants. Most of the people, as you know, they were tenants at the time. So they were given this type of information so that they can select the proper housing for them. And the last one was given to the structural engineers who are involved in the planning and designing of the buildings, so that they can make sure they are following the order and the direction given in the National Building Code. And the study was done successfully, perfectly, but still we had some limitations. The policy implications we didn't have as a researcher or let's say as an outsider. It was not possible to ensure that everything is like implemented perfectly by the citizen or the local authority. It's not possible to ensure. So that was the limitations left of the research. So I finished quickly the first part of the discussion, the case study one. So now let's have some time. If you have any quick questions, we can have little time, and then I will go to the second part of the discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Faiz. That was wonderful. It was very comprehensive as well, and I was quite pleasantly surprised to see that your survey exercise was such well planned and it was quite extensive. I mean, 720 samples where you have to spend more than 45 minutes or so. So that's about around maybe at least 720 man hours spent on that. And I'm sure you must have had several teams doing things in parallel to actually complete that within a short period of time.
Yeah, it was a, like, as I said, that people supported us, and I had good support from the universities and the city office. They gave me volunteers, like one man and one male and female volunteers. So based on the situation of the house, if we cannot find the male member, the senior member of the house, the female member could attend the interview. So every day we had morning meeting and the end of the survey evening meeting. So we ensure that every day the targeted number is done. So it is possible because we made the situation that people thought that we are our people. And I forget to mention that it was discussed in the local newspaper that this type of survey is going to happen in your area. So either in form of news or views or somehow we manage the local newspaper. So people welcome us, and the city office helped us a lot.
That's wonderful. So how many teams were doing this in parallel? Volunteers and everything?
The volunteers, we completed the survey, because the number, that was the first 3 weeks, we didn't do anything except the survey. And after the first 3 weeks, I quickly, that was the day activity, and the evening activity input the data in the Excel. So every day's task was that, otherwise we will be behind, because our commitment was the city that we will share the data with them, and also will involve them in the research. So the thing is that ownership is important for the city. We found that if we don't share the ownership, it's not a big deal, but they are involving here with doing nothing, but it gives us a good access to the completion of the research. Wow. So after the third week, third week we have the result, and we try to share the result every day.
Wow. Okay, so we have a lot of really interesting questions. So I'll go first. There is one from Farah. He was saying that is generally known that Dhaka is not really vulnerable to earthquakes. Please explain about seismic hazard in Dhaka and Bangladesh.
Well, it was thought previously, maybe 10 years before, Dhaka resident, they were thinking that we are not vulnerable. But the seismological research, seismological data was not considered in a way. And people, in fact, nowadays the information technology, the communication is very fast. And for the last 5 years, I would say for the last 5 years, the recent result and the recent seismic activity in the area, the Nepal earthquake, the Assam earthquake, some Indian earthquakes, several earthquakes in Afghanistan. So it gives a message to Dhaka, and some part of Bangladesh, especially the northern part of Bangladesh, we had the seismicity there. So this seismic activity already like give the message to the citizens, the people. We have a seismic map. We have 3 zones, same as Pakistan. I think Pakistan has 3 zones, and you are in Lahore. Lahore in the lowest possible zone. So Dhaka is not lowest. Dhaka is in the second possible zone. The G is gravitation level is 0.15. And we have other cities 0.21, 0.35. It's very vulnerable, which is very close to the Dauki fault area, near the Indian fault area. So Dhaka is like not the first zone, but second zone, but still people are considering because of the heavy constructions and the high population.
That's great. So thank you for explaining that. We have some really interesting questions. There's one from Kaleem Rahman, who is it's more related to Pakistan. He's asking what seismic authorities survey studies predict about recurrence of Balakot or Kashmir, northern areas of Pakistan, incident of the earthquake. So I think that's it's a related question in the sense, but it may not be something that you already know of. So I can pass this one if you'd like to take that.
No, it's better to pass.
Okay, so from Samiullah, there's a question. From what I understood, the vulnerable households were chosen based on structural factors of the building. How important are the non-structural factors like type of ceiling systems, electric systems, conditioning, firefighting system, water system, and type of furniture? Although they do not directly impact the capability of the building to withstand earthquakes, but they're important factors to estimate the extent of damage.
Yeah, that is right. But the study that is conducted, it was the primary one, so we cannot include those things in the primary study. So it will go for the extensive study. So that's why we did not consider those things.
Okay. So it's basically going into more detailed, let's say, household level detail.
Exactly, which is not possible for the researcher because we have limitations of everything, and they will not welcome us to come inside. It is the job of the local city office. So this is their task. They will do this thing.
Absolutely. So there's one more, which is seismic and seismic vulnerability assessment only done in area where seismic intensity is high? So so basically, as what I understand is we have different seismic zones. So are we only concerned in areas where seismic intensity is high?
No. In fact, as I show you, the Dhaka, we have separated them based on the clustering data. We have separated Dhaka into 3 clusters: high risk, low risk, and the moderate risk. So from every risk area, how we consider risk, the building structure, age of the building, the population density, building density, we divided them into high and low and moderate. So from every cluster, we have picked 6 wards. And 6 wards, each ward we selected 40 samples. So it was equally selected. The area was equally selected.
That's thank you for answering that. I think for now we can take a break from this and go back to the lecture. And at the end, we can make sure we cover most of the questions again.
Okay, fine. Thank you for the first part and for the nice questions. So I have 20 minutes. Let me try to finish within 20 minutes. The next one is not big like this Dhaka one, because that is another perspective. So next study is about the low cost, seismic vulnerability assessment of the structure, residential building, or it can be any building. So we have decided the residential building in the city of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. So you will be knowing many things about the city of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. And this is the second study we have conducted. The first study of this kind was conducted in the city of Győr in Hungary. And when we are successful, then we try to apply this one in the city of Jeddah. So I have prompt questions, but I'm just skipping this prompt question for now to save time. So let's go to that discussion directly. The objective of the study was to determine seismic risk by evaluating hazard and the vulnerability. So we consider the building categories, and then vulnerability of the building, local site effect data was collected, and earthquake risk was assessed. So other types are not possible to conduct in Jeddah, but all study we have considered in the city of Gior in Hungary, because we didn't have any restrictions in Hungary, but in Saudi Arabia we have a lot of restrictions to follow. In fact, when you conduct the research outside, we have to follow the local order, local situation, and we have to definitely oblige the resolution. Without that, the study cannot be successful. So the aim of the study was the vulnerability as an important parameter to assess seismic risk requires evaluation of large building population in a short period of time by simple yet robust method capable of quantifying the seismic performance of the building. So we try to quantify the seismic performance of the building. So if you can recall the figure I have shown you from Hajuz, the one is the discrete one and it's the continuous one, the relation between the damage and the structural thing. So that is used for the quantification. So we have a chance to apply this one. So I would consider this is the second part of the first study. First study done for the citizen of the city, and second was done mostly on the building structure and the pattern of the building. So the study aims to quantitatively evaluate the differences of older and more recent buildings in a rapidly expanding city in Saudi Arabia. Modes of assess the vulnerability. There are different methods of analyze the vulnerability of the building. So it can be post-earthquake studies, analytical or numerical methods, using expert opinions, or offering the possibility to estimate potential damage before an earthquake, etc. So these are the common methods that we apply to check the vulnerability of any buildings or residential buildings. But we are talking about, or we applied the rapid visual screening method, which is developed by FEMA, and it has other name also. It also called RDM, rapid evaluation method. Is one such approach. It was used to residential building built in two different historical periods in Jeddah. So visual screening method, how it works, it allows for the quantification of structural vulnerabilities more easily than analytical approaches. So analytical approaches, it has several requirements, but this visual screening method is also, it doesn't have, in fact, only visualization and seeing the building. You just fill the information form, it's one-page information form, and take two pictures of the building for pictorial analysis. There is no need for detailed calculations. In case of observed vulnerability, the damage is defined as a ratio of the replacement cost for the degree of loss of all affected buildings and the number of the casualties. Now, it has a chance after collecting the data from the building by visual observation, we have a score assignment because the data will be not similar and we cannot expect the like scientific data from each building. So score assignment is used, or is called score modifier. A score assignment determines the seismically hazardous structure by identifying structural deficiencies, and quantitative information are gathered to determine the level of damage according to the severity of the potential seismic event. It's a parameter for includes investigations are. So this score assignment, it includes the quality of the materials, type of the foundations, number of the stories of the building, state of the conversion, and the stiffness of the structure. So this score assignment potential structure deficiencies are identified from observed correlations between damage and the structural characteristics. The main aim is to determine if a particular building needs a more detailed investigation or not. So this is the main point of this study, the rapid visual screening method. It will not say that my building is vulnerable and I have to do something right now. but we can say this building needs further investigation by the expert. So that is the part. So it will make the general understanding of the condition of the building. Considering the advantage of socio score assignment with respect to observed data or expert opinions, and as it allows to updating following a method modification to the building structure, RVS method was chosen for the case study carried out in the city of Jeddah. So very quickly, this is the picture of the city of Jeddah in 1932. Jeddah was very small at the time, and we have total building number we have collected. You can see the total building number. By this survey, we selected two area. One is the Balad, old city in Balad, and another one is the Al Salama. If you have any experience of visiting Saudi Arabia, Al Balad area is the older one, where Hajis after Hajj they go for shopping. That is the old city Al Balad. But Al Salama is very modern city near the airport. So we have selected these two area just opposite. We take around more than 1,000 buildings from the city. See the Al Balad area. This is the inner side of Al Balad. You go to the shopping center, but if you go back side of the shopping center, you will find these oldest structures. There are many buildings more than 100 years that people are still living there. So this picture was taken in 1938. So see, the city of Jeddah is expanding. It's beautiful and marvelous city now. This picture was taken in 2000. This picture was taken in 2019. So now if you go, you will be surprised to see the city of Jeddah, how beautiful the city is. But when disaster, the most affecting disaster nowadays is the rain, because the drainage system is not like that. And after every rain, every year, once or twice, there are big rain and it causes flood. And the flood lasts for 3 to 4 days. So this is one of the biggest disaster in the city of Jeddah. So after the disaster, you can see what happens there. Unbelievable that they are also having this type of disaster. This is the area of the two cities. The left side is the Al Balad area, and the right side is the Al Salama district area. So the Saudi Arabia, in fact, the Jeddah is on the Red Sea. The location of the city is near the Red Sea, and there are fault in the beneath of the water level of the Red Sea. So it is seismically, it is in the second zone of the area, but seismic activity is very low. Sometimes they are feeling very mild earthquakes, so it is not considered. So the thing is that more or less similar, that they didn't have any big earthquake for the last let's say long years. So the residents do not have any consideration of the earthquake in the city. So the city has a lot of masonry structure, like this type of old masonry structure, and even they are constructing new masonry structure, not following the RCCA structure, but some of the oldest building like 100 years or around 100 years building. So they are most vulnerable in the city to consider. Many of the building would be impossible to analyze quickly by typical structural engineering method because of the construction pattern of the building. So it's not like similar construction pattern. And people like other cities like Dhaka, they are changing the structure by themselves. They have a approved plan, but they're changed. In Jeddah, we found the same practice. The people are changing because of the need of the family. We need more rooms. We have other brothers, so we need more space. We have changed some things like that. So buildings are too irregular and have such a wide variety of materials, properties that an expert would be needed to fully understand the heterogeneous mix of the components. It's very important and very difficult to understand the building structure in the city of Jeddah. So you can see some of the common structures. So mostly the bottom of the buildings, we have the same thing here, soft storing. We have the extended afterwards. So you can see that the top part is the built afterwards. It's not the original part. Here we can see the soft column. We can see the soft column, and you can see the bottom, the ground floor of the building is like open. So in case of earthquake, where the power will be transmitted to the ground, there is no opening, there is no column or being, because it's opening like use of the glass, and it's like a commercial shop or something. Most of the buildings near the big roads in Jeddah is like that. And this one is another example of the heavy overheading. You see it's from the second floor, the building is hanging. and you can go to up to the 6th or 2nd floors hanging building. So this is another example of the change in the construction pattern. So the building is coming towards the road. So here is the seismic distribution of Jeddah. It's not like that there is nothing happening there, but US Geological Survey, they are recording every time all over the world. And that time we have collected the information that Jeddah is the peak ground acceleration level is 0.15 G. And we collected the hydrological data, soil data, and the earthquake records for this study to conduct the study. So we have used the two things here according to the FEMA 155. So this is the guide for the rapid visual screening method. So we took the BHS scoring, that is basic structural hazard score matrix, and also the maximum considered earthquake that is MCE score. Based on these two equations, we conducted the study. We have used the checklist. The checklist was prepared based on the previous study conducted in Hungary, and the most used building construction pattern in that area. We identified the buildings like district and the number. We general data like age, function, regularity, position of the building, change function of the building, previous damage of the building, and also the structural data like construction system, the quality of the materials and the workmanship, and any other information was collected. So this was the primary findings of the survey. You can see the number of the building in the older city. We have like surveyed 308 buildings, and more than 700 buildings in the new area. Is proportionate according to the number of the building we have decided. We have found the good buildings and also the moderate quality of the buildings. And the major construction year, you can see we decided this year according to the period of the king. Okay, so the I don't have time to explain all the king's period, but there is a development when Saudi Arabia accepted the building construction code, and now they are following the building construction code, and it is mandatory for every area. And it happened from the last king who died, King Abdullah. He approved, and now the new king is implementing this thing in the construction. And you know, the implementation is strict, it's super strict. If you are caught by the police in Saudi Arabia, in anywhere in Makkah, when you are going for Umrah or Hajj, you will see the security understand nothing. They know only the law. They are saying in the law. So no way, you have to follow what they are saying. So the thing is that in the society is controlled by such a thing. So people are trying to follow, but even after that, there are some pitfalls area. And this is the thing that we found in the survey. No wooden structure, only one wooden frame structure we found there. Most of the construction, we found the concrete frame with the infill walls is the common practice in the new area, Al Salama area, but older area, most of the things we found the typical masonry constructions. But the new area, we also found the typical constructions like the building has no foundation in the ground. They are just started construction on the ground within 1 meter or less than 1 meter. So this type of vulnerable buildings we found in the Al Salama area. And for the score modifier, when we apply the score modifier on the primary investigation, so we applied the vertical irregularity modifier based on the mass compactness or irregularity and the relation to the adjacent building in case of in the older city part. We also constructed a code modifier in case of the building built before 1983 with a pre-code modifier. So because 1983 is the time when the building code was enacted, a post-code modifier was taken into account for buildings built after 2007. So when it was enacted according to the new code. Mid-rise modifier for buildings having more than 4 stories, and soil score modifier based on interviews with the soil testing company. So the soil modifier, we need the soil tables, soil boring data, and also the water table data of the city, which is not possible to collect from the government organizations because of different formalities. So finally, we could hire, or we could, let's say, buy those data from the third-party organizations. So they are reliable organizations, but we had to buy from the research money. So these are the modifiers that we have applied for the the building structural code. So BHS modifier, This was applied for Al Balad and Salama. And this is the soil modifier. In case of the soil, we applied this modifier for the final analysis. And then we run the analysis in the software. In fact, macros enable Excel and other part of the software we enabled, and we found the result. So this is the result for Al Balad area. You can see this picture. If I explain, you will understand. In the bottom, you can see the line starting from -1, and the right side is 5. So any score below 2 is vulnerable. It requires further investigation. We are not saying this building is vulnerable, but this building has irregularity which cannot withstand the earthquake force, because there is not enough column or beam which can transmit the pressure to the ground. So any score below 2 needs further investigation. So this is the application of famous rapid visual screening method. In case of Al Balad, we found good result. In fact, most of the buildings, because they are new and they constructed after the enactment of the building code, so the score is more than 2. So we made this comparative analysis of these two area side by side, and we can see that buildings in mostly in Al Balad area. So according to the number of the building, how many buildings need this analysis for the further investigations in number, this method will show you the number, and it will give the city office or the city authority, the building construction authority, to decide their next step to deal with these buildings. Okay, the last one is the conclusion. The evaluation of demonstrates the relative case and how low cost of the RVS system, since the scoring is based on experience in the US and other countries. A more rigorous evaluation of structural performance under seismic loads would be helpful, because there is no local methodology we found in the area, except this one developed FEMA, and FEMA definitely they took the American experience. But we could apply this one because Saudi Arabia is following the American building construction code before they enacted their own building code. So we have considered some of the limitations here. And summary of this, I don't have a mass summary to involve the local authority in this research, because you know there are a lot of restrictions in Saudi Arabia and government resolutions, and it takes all formality takes a longer period for approval, and without approval we cannot do. What we could do, we could involve the city office in the research process. So we had good support from the local city office. We involved the local research organizations. We involved the local community and the residents when we work. So this is important, and it was difficult to involve the local residents. I was not allowed to work in the field, to visit in the field, as I'm a foreigner in Jeddah. So I used our people in the university, especially our third year and fourth year students. They help us to work there. And even after that, when they tried to take picture, they were forbidden. Hey, why you are taking the a picture of my house? So they managed taking the picture using their known people, their relatives, their friends, and connection was used to take the pictures. And also we had a chance to share the experience in the community level, so that the research has started, but we could not say that we could implement the result there, but still we are hoping the result will be implemented there. Well, so that's all the discussion now. And finally, I'm in the end of the discussion very quickly. So I will keep this reflection 3 parts for you. Those who attended, I thank you. I can see a good number of scholars, junior and senior scholars joined. So this is question for the junior scholars. So 3 most important points you learned today, if you can consider, then you can utilize this time, that what is my learning point from this discussion. 2 links between seismic assessment and urban resilience, if you can find 2 links from the discussion. And one thing you would like to learn more about urban resilience investigation. So I have introduced 2 methods, one involving the local residents, and another one is the involving the local structural pattern. So if you can think and if you can note down in your notebook, it will be good for you definitely to utilize this time. And the last one is the possible further study. If you are interested, you can contact the Next step, the qualitative or quantitative research consideration in urban disaster resilience studies, disaster management research methodologies, writing academic or conference paper on disaster management, and writing journal paper on disaster management, application of statistical software or statistics in disaster management studies, and also application of GIS in disaster management. So if anyone of you are interested to know more, I will be happy to involve with you. This is my favorite side of research on disaster management. So I'll be happy to assist you. And that's all. Thank you.
Wow, Dr. Faiz, that's dot on the clock. That's I have to appreciate some wonderful time management on your part, despite me taking some time on the questions. But amazing time management. Thank you. And I have some questions lined up. So just let me. So we have Ali asking, to what extent can the visual observation be done through Google Street View? Is that possible?
Google Street View, nowadays, Google Street View developed a lot. You can see the street and you can see the outer surface of the building, but it is not possible for the visual screening because you have to observe the building from 4 sides.
Oh.
And you have to take picture, at least 2 pictures, one with the entrance of the building and another one with the whole building. Okay, from the road or any visible places. So Google Street, I think it's not possible.
Okay, thank you so much. And also I think in a lot of places we may not have Google Street View, especially well in Pakistan, we don't have much coverage. So those kind of challenges may be there as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we have another question. How do we account for so much economic disparity and variability, for example, in business centers versus slums or low-income areas or old city areas like you showed, for example?
Yeah, the case study number 1, I have shown you and if you refer to the paper number 1, so here you can see the third group of the people who are the most vulnerable situation, in fact, in their thinking. So third category of the people is the poor people who doesn't consider. You will find in the COVID situation, some people in the street, they are not using mask. If you ask, where is your mask? They say, I'm very poor. Corona will not come to you. But in case of disaster, they're the worst sufferer because they don't have the capacity. So these people, as I said during the discussion, they need some extra support to involve them, to bring them in the structure so that they can work together. So this is the disparity situation. So they cannot come in their present situation because their recognition is higher or their acceptance is very lower. So in that case, they will consider, I'm not vulnerable, but my neighbor is vulnerable. So they should bring in the similar umbrella and then we can work together.
That's, thank you. So we have another one. This one, it is one from my side. Actually, I wanted to take that for the last, but we still have a lot of questions from the students. So I'll be selfish and ask mine first. So what are the low-hanging fruits for urban resilience? So we have developing countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh. So we have a lot of places where the risks are not well understood. And the willingness to pay is also either less or we are not certain. Let's say the surveyed willingness to pay versus actual willingness to pay may be really different. So how do we say, okay, this is something which could be, let's say, low cost but high impact for boosting urban resilience in developing countries?
Well, it depends on the situation. In fact, for Dhaka, that calculation we have conducted, what will be the minimum cost for retrofitting for the existing building. So it was less than $1, in fact, less than $1 at that time. So I don't know what will be the calculation in a city in Pakistan. So we have to just follow the research organization or the building research organizations or university, they have definitely the expert who are working in the structural engineering thing, they have the calculations. So we have to rely on them, on their calculation, and this information should be taken to the people. Now, the commitment is important, as I said during my discussion, how we can ensure the commitment of the people, because they will say you, yes, I will contribute from my pocket $10, but when you come, oh, no, I didn't say that. So there is nothing, we cannot say you sign here, you say that you will give 10. So this commitment should be maintained by the local community organizations. So every mohalla, there is a community organizations, or they know each other. In some places, we found the masjid is the place where they know each other. And when we had the discussion in the masjid, so there is no way that, oh, no, I didn't say that. So the thing is that we involve those people, that you maintain your commitment in your way. But the thing is that when they are committed, the ward office, that the city office will be interested. Yes, these people are committed and they are working, and we can involve and we can bring our support from our side.
Thank you. That's a very interesting answer. So I would have one last question from one of my students. Sami asks, there is an emerging concept of having resilience hubs at local level, especially after COVID-19. They can provide education, information, and other community services. They can be useful in times of crisis to channel health services and other supplies and serve as a hub for coordinating efforts. Is the ward level, which you suggested in Dhaka study, similar to this concept of resilience hub? So, yeah.
I think it is the similar level, because the ward level where the resident has the immediate access. It is within the walking distance. Normally, they are very close to the area. So each ward area has a ward office, and a smaller entity than the ward office is the community organizations. So nowadays, they are working for the COVID situation, for the improvement or managing the situation in the local area. So I think it can be the similar one. So in fact, the COVID situation will give us a chance if what can we bring to apply for the disaster resilience. But I think this is similar that what I have seen in Dhaka, and we already involved the ward office in Dhaka, and they are still working with the resident in that area who committed that they will do something. And there's a big change, big development Dhaka happened after the study has conducted.
Thank you, Dr. Faiz. So thank you again for sharing your research and your findings with us. And most of all, we truly appreciate you taking your time out, and for given this time difference again, I have to really appreciate your dedication and your effort for the students and for everyone here at UMT. So I think in the future, I would like to really call upon you again, request your support, and so that we can benefit from more of your experiences. And I hope that we can, as we discussed earlier, so we can have some workshop or some training for those students who want to do research in disaster management or research in these areas, where you could, of course, benefit them as a mentor, but also help them with their research methodologies, and guide them as a very senior researcher in the field. So thank you so much again, Dr. Faiz. And for the participants, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. We had some very interesting questions. I really hope that you benefited from this wonderful lecture and Dr. Faiz's research. And I hope you can join us again in the near future.